What is up, everyone, and welcome to episode 29 of the Trainer Scoop, a podcast dedicated to helping individuals passionate about fitness improve in life and lifting. Thank you all so much for checking out episode 29. Really appreciate you all being here, and I'm very happy to bring a question that I should have asked before, Mason, but I'm very happy to bring Mason, and then is it Nowak?
It's Nowak.
Nowak.
I mean, very, very minor.
My apologies, Mason.
You're good.
Very happy to bring Mason Nowak to this episode, who has a lot of cool stuff going on, and he's also had his fair share of interesting experiences in this fitness realm. So I'll stop talking, Mason. If you want to say what's up to the people, give a little bit of an intro, background, go for it, man.
What's up, people? I'm Mason. I got a bachelor's in kinesiology from Iowa State University. During my last semester there, I had the opportunity to go intern at Elite FTS. To anyone who doesn't know, I don't know, some people don't know. It's if you're into powerlifting, Westside Barbell was like the big place in 90s, early 2000s, because they were like the people in powerlifting. But Dave Tate was one of the, I don't know if he's one of the first people there, but he was there for a while, and he eventually started this offshoot. Well, it was not an offshoot because it's his own thing, but it sort of functioned in a way of being the world's like connection to Westside Barbell at a point, because it was like, okay, you had to either wait for articles in like Powerlifting USA magazine, or you had to like literally call Louis Simmons on the phone, which apparently was the thing you could just do all the time. So I guess that had its advantages. But he brought it to the internet, I guess, which is kind of what sort of made it the godfather of everything else you find in the internet these days. Like, would we have podcasts now? What would YouTube channels be like without Elite FTS? I think they'd be different. I think it's definitely, obviously I'm a little biased, but I think it's more important sometimes than we realize, at least as guys that are like 23-ish, 24-ish.
Yeah, that's something I've never thought, but now that you say it, I think it's very true. You think about like the type of information dissemination they were doing in like, early to, I guess, the end of the 2010s. I don't know if anyone else had that type of presence. I think they did mostly forums back then, but then just thinking the butterfly effect, that is a very good point, man. So shout out to Elite FTS and Dave Tate for kind of being that liaison from the knowledge that was Westside Barbell to the rest of the world. So that's really cool.
Before that, I did some internships with like the strength and conditioning teams at Iowa State. So I got to work with the Olympic sports and football. And for those who don't know, Olympic sports is just like, it's basically every sport besides football. It's like there's sports that are in the Olympics, not necessarily anyone they're going there right now, but it was like wrestling, swim and dive, golf, volleyball, a long list, everything, soccer.
Yeah, you were a busy guy then.
Yeah, I tried. It was like I said, just as I can talk all day on these kind of podcasts, I can freaking hang out in a gym for like 12 hours a day, and I'm set as long as I get my workout in.
Right, I'm right there with you, man. Most definitely. So, Mason, one thing that I feel like is pretty badass, and while it is growing in presence, it's still not as mainstream as other, I guess, modalities of fitness, is you're into strongman. So you compete yourself. You also coach a little bit. So talk about that, man. I'm super interested to hear your experiences.
It's funny because like, powerlifting's like blowing up. Like, I'm sure if you took like the Google Trends, and it was like amount of people Googling powerlifting in like 2010 versus the amount of people Googling powerlifting in like 2021, it's got to be like 30 times as many, like minimum.
Mm-hmm.
And as like naturally, strongman kind of blew up as well, because you can't really grow one strength sport without the other ones growing. I don't know. It's funny to me because everyone always sees it like this weird, like it's this huge separation between powerlifting, but it's like, it's just a strength sport. It's a bunch of guys that like to get really strong. They compete in like slightly different events, but it's not as far out as people think. I think people see this barrier, and it's like, in reality, take a powerlifter, have him go to a strongman gym. He's, that's it. That's all you got to do. You just got to go and start using them. That's the only difference.
Yeah, most definitely. How did you kind of break that barrier to entry when you first started training strongman?
Well, I don't want to say I was lucky because that almost makes it sound negative, but I never like attached myself directly to powerlifting at any point. Like I was a huge fan of it, you know, just because it's like, who is, there's not a lot of guys in the space or people in the space that aren't interested in like max strength in some capacity. And you see the freaking powerlifters. And if you're not a dude that's like freaking 6'4", 300 plus pounds, especially you saw those smaller guys as they started to get popular. Like, I don't know, like Johnny Candido was like the only powerlifting YouTuber at like one point. I mean, he wasn't the only one, but to me, like that was the big name when I was first getting into this kind of stuff. It was like, you go powerlifting or like how to squat, how to deadlift on YouTube, and Johnny Candido comes up. You're like, okay, cool. This guy's like, he's like 160, 180 pounds. You know, he fluctuated in between there. See him freaking squatting 5-6 plates and deadlifting 6 or 7. And you're like, all right, this is some pretty cool stuff. So I had just been trying to get strong. Right. And then Iowa State, fortunately, they have a weight club, which is like really only exists through like pure luck. But like we had our own section of like basement where we got to keep like our own equipment, and it was like
Cool.
sealed off from everybody else if you didn't like pay the fee and stuff like that. And like, yeah, that was it, you know, like you didn't like have to compete X amount of times a year, like total a certain amount, but it was you go in, there's squat racks, there's reverse hypers, glute ham raises. It was one reverse hyper that no one used, but get your safety squat bar, your power bars, your chains, your bands. It was a little it's not directly strength sports focused, but that was the natural end result, because powerlifter and stuff like that, they didn't want to go and train at like the commercial style gym. Like it worked just fine, but it wasn't like the area for like training, you know. You didn't have like treadmills in the corner and like old people walking the laps around you. So that was my first like serious type gym. And then when I came home from college that spring, and a strongman gym had like popped up in my town. Like I'd known about it. Like I tried Googling it like a couple of years before, and like they had some weird, you know, tiny website about how like they met in this like warehouse in like the middle of nowhere. And I was like freaking like 15 at the time. So I'm like, okay, well that's cool. But they'd opened up like a real gym like a couple of years later, and I'm just driving by it. I'm like, oh shit, guess I know where I'm going, you know?
Oh yeah.
And so they had a like 17. I wasn't 17. I was 18. I'm a little younger for, I guess I'm not in a grade anymore because I'm an adult, but
I get what you're saying though.
Yeah. I was like 18 to go in there, and I'm like, hey, this is like freaking sweet. So I start trying to train these like strongman things. But then B, I went and did like a novice competition that they were hosting, you know, a couple months later. I'm like, when in Rome, right?
Yeah, that's cool.
And I'd always been interested in strongman because like you go and see pictures and videos of like Mariusz Pudzianowski and like who was I thinking, Derek Poundstone, just these freaking mountains of dudes manhandling weight all the time, and you're like, it's pretty damn cool.
Definitely. That brings me back to the story from Iowa State and how you guys had kind of like your separate area. We were pushing for that so hard when I was in the powerlifting club at Ohio State. And I don't think we ever got it, but eventually, you know, there was like 5 gyms on OSU's campus. They did like transition one into having like a nice setup, whether it be like the reverse hypers. They had some GPs, like some actual Rogue. They had an Alico combo rack too, which I thought was pretty nice.
Damn.
Yeah. So eventually,
it's the best you can ask for a not powerlifting gym.
Yeah. But that powerlifting club was actually kind of like my first experience with Elite FTS, because you know, exactly the same as you saw Johnny Candido on YouTube crushing weights. You ran the 6-week program. You're like, okay, getting strong is cool. And then you know, there's so much more out there through Elite FTS. And when I was a freshman, I actually got to go out to, I think they had like an older facility. They said it was like the 4th generation. Now they're at a whole new facility at Elite FTS.
Yeah.
With just their iteration of the gym. But we went out there and had like Dave Tate form check a little bit, had some other people help us out.
Oh,
And
like the powerlifting club did?
yeah.
Yeah, that's cool.
And some of those guys were actually like very competitive powerlifters, very strong guys. But I wasn't by any means. I
Yeah.
was like 6'2", 180, and
Yeah.
I just remember I distinctly remember I was benching and Dave Tate was like checking it, and I was like, got up from repping 135 for a couple times. I'm like, all right, Dave, what can I work on? He's like, yo, go help this kid. I was like, oh, he just didn't even know what to say about it. Like, yeah, it's funny how we were kind of talking off air in the strength community. A lot of people have similar paths and similar acquaintances. So it's cool to see that you've been able to get some great experience and exposure in the industry. That's awesome.
It was funny, like Dave's like he's kind of like an introverted guy in a way, but he likes giving back, obviously. Like it's a big core component of Elite FTS. But I imagine he was kind of in a scenario where he's like, he sees that and he's like, literally anything, like I don't know, man. Like, yeah, you can, but like basically anything I tell you could like fix your bench. So I'm just gonna have like somebody else that it's like a little more patient than me or something.
Yeah. I think there's a guy that I remember everybody was geeking out about him at Elite FTS, and he's gone on to total like 2,100. He's a strong dude. He's up in Cleveland now. His name's escaping me, but yeah, I was like, fair enough. We got to come experience the gym and be in the presence of some cool individuals. So
yeah,
I want to take it back a little bit though, Mason. What originally kind of made you want to pursue this whole fitness thing, whether it be why you decided to go to school for it, and then of course after school, what was the origins behind your story?
I wish I had like a cooler story. I mean, not that really anyone has like that cool of a story. Like it's lifting weights at the end of the day. Like it's cool as hell to us, but like in the grand scheme of things, it's like,
I'm gonna stop you here,
we're not
Mason.
saving.
If it doesn't resemble Bruce Wayne's upcoming, we're just gonna end the podcast. We're just done.
I got a little bit for that. It's almost like that. I gotta say, I don't know what year Dark Knight Rises came out, because it's very important to the story.
That was 2011 or 12.
Yeah, probably. Actually, it might have been earlier than that even. I mean, either way, whatever. That was half of a joke. It's like I was sort of like, I was never like any sort of freak athlete or even maybe just athlete at all as a younger kid. I stayed at home, played video games, didn't do much, was pretty overweight for the most part, especially like, I gotta say, like, I don't know how tall I was in 8th grade, but I know I was like 155 and I know I wasn't tall and I know it wasn't muscle. And I don't know, there's a lot of people that kind of, or I feel like maybe I'm projecting. There's like a couple groups of people that get really into like strength sports. It's like those that were like former fat kids growing up, or those that are like short. And so it's like dudes that are like pretty insecure. And that was sort of at one point it was a vehicle to try to gain confidence.
Definitely.
Or maybe not gain confidence, but at least like try to improve their looks or their strength and try to protect the ego a bit. Mm-hmm. And then hopefully eventually it turned into like true confidence for, the people that stick around long enough. But that was I was in the fat kid camp. I'm of average height. And it was like just eventually, I think it was the summer coming into 8th grade, or no, it might have been right after freshman year. So maybe it was 2011. I swear to God, I don't know. Like, obviously, the background of that played a much bigger role. But the catalyst was I saw the movie Dark Knight Rises. I hadn't even seen the first one. And freaking Bane, that dude's got goddamn, in hindsight, they're not as big, but he's got like traps to the ceiling. He's just this giant beast of a dude. Batman's this badass. And I'm like, okay, what's stopping me from being like Batman, right? Clearly very little in the way besides all this mythical parts where he bench presses like 10,000 pounds and has like $1 billion and shit like that. But
real quick, that's also crazy because I saw the Dark Knight Rises before the Dark Knight, and I was like, damn, Bane is jacked. Like that would be cool. Maybe wasn't the true catalyst, but I had the similar thought.
I mean, it wasn't like a catalyst, but like I remember like I go home and I like start Googling like martial arts and shit like that and like weightlifting routines.
Yep. That's
and
sweet.
So at that time I got into Brazilian jiu-jitsu. I'd done like a little bit of wrestling because I'm from Iowa, you know, for like 20 years. And like that's half the shit there is wrestling.
Mm-hmm.
And I wasn't great at it. Not gonna pretend I wasn't good at it either. But I got into Brazilian jiu-jitsu because it sounded interesting to me. There was a school nearby, and you know, it kind of built on the background of a little bit of wrestling that I had. And then that was more accessible to me because I was like able to go to it regularly. And at that point I'm trying to get my hands on weights.
Mm-hmm.
Can't really do it. You know, I get to go to like the YMCA occasionally. I'm trying to run like starting strength and it's going terribly. But yeah, it was me, or what we had a dumbbell set. So I'm like alternating between like these dumbbell workouts and like occasionally going to the YMCA to get my hands on a barbell, trying to train as much like Brazilian jiu-jitsu as possible. And eventually like my dad got like a power rack. He got it for like my brother even. He didn't even like get it for me. But I got my hands on a power rack. I'm like, all right, now I can train 4 times a week. Keep training Brazilian jiu-jitsu. That's when I start doing stuff like Candido linear, 5-3-1, which I butchered the shit out of. Trying to think if I did anything besides those. I'm pretty sure I just ran 5-3-1 in like the worst way possible about 100 times.
What did you do? And, were you just overshooting?
Well, yeah, basically. Yeah. Well, you know nothing, but you think you know everything. So you're like, okay, these are all the accessories I need to do, and they're freaking stupid. And you know, like, maybe I'm generalizing a bit, but I feel like everybody does not do any of the training max shit on 5-3-1. Like that's the whole foundation of 5-3-1. It's like, okay, we're just going to accumulate a bunch of sub-maximal volume over and over again, and we're going to do it really slowly. But in that time, I'm like, okay, well, there's 2 programs in existence, starting strength and 5-3-1. And I don't want to wait forever on 5-3-1. So I'm just going to jack up my training max way higher than anything I've even hit. All my sets are going to look like shit. I'm never going to go like even 1 more rep than my AMRAPs. And then I'm going to wonder why I don't make any progress.
I did the same thing on the Candido program, because I know you like put in the inputs into an Excel sheet and then it spits out, you know, your weights. And I was like, it seems a little light. Let's try to go for the max every week.
Yeah.
And I was like, man, I didn't get any stronger. One of my friends was like, did you actually follow what they said to do? I'm like, well, no, it was too easy. He's like, I'm done talking. He walked away. I was like, not until like years later did I realize, okay. Yeah, that sub-maximal work actually paid off.
It actually like makes sense. You can't just like literally just do these like dog shit RPE 10 sets when you have no idea what you're doing and expect them like they work, you know, but holy hell, they probably would have worked a lot better if I had actually read 5-3-1. That was the problem. 5-3-1 was too easy for people to just like write it out on like a Word doc or like Excel and then pass around to people. And everyone's like, I got it. This is 5-3-1. It's like 4 sentences. And it's like, no, 5-3-1 is like 3 fucking books. Like there's a buttload to 5-3-1. Like if you don't read the 5-3-1 books, you're probably not running actual 5-3-1.
Yeah.
Because 5-3-1 is not really a program. Like once he's done like 3 books, there's so many variants of it. It's like barely like one actual program anymore. It's just like Jim Wendler wrote out everything he's ever thought about training in like 3 books.
Yeah, that's funny. That is a good way to look at it too.
Well, like that's what all the good like quote unquote programs are, especially if they only have that one element like 5-3-1 is like it's never a program. If it works, it's never a program. It's a system. Yeah. Because if it's just a program, it's like if you're lucky, that's the program that's appropriate for you at the time. But if it could just be wrong, you know, like I tried to run, me and my friend, we were both running Cone Philippi 12-week deadlift program or whatever, where you do like heavy double and then you do like speed doubles and then you do like your circuit or whatever. Yeah. Well, that motherfucker like ran it until he got like a 6-plate deadlift and I ran it and then my back hurt. My max didn't go up. I'm like, well, here's the difference is like he was a dude with like really long arms. So like all he really had to do was find a way to keep adding weight onto the bar without like going crazy, and he could train it one day a week and it'd be fine because his deadlift looked the same every single rep. But for me, my deadlift looked like fucking shit. So if I did it once a week really heavy, my form just gets progressively worse every single week. And I never actually take the time to learn how to deadlift or build up like actual hamstrings and shit.
Yeah. Man, that's funny looking back on, I was pretty much the same way as you, just like Googling, YouTubing, everything I could, because I didn't know how else to learn about it. And
yeah, right. I grew up right when the internet came out. I'm like, the fuck is a book? Let's just Google everything.
Right. It's funny looking back on those programs and like, your wins and losses with them. But
yeah,
got you. So
Candido 6-week, that was one that worked for me.
Which one was?
The 6-week Candido one.
Yeah.
I still don't understand how the hell that program works. Like I look at the Excel sheet, I'm like, this is basically black magic, but I ran it like 3 times and every time I hit like a 30-pound squat PR.
Dude, it's just like, I don't think he gets enough credit for like his programming methodologies. Yeah. I don't know why. Maybe it's because on his YouTube channel he doesn't necessarily like stress that as much as other things. Like, lately he's been talking about social issues on like the USAPL and all that stuff.
USAPL drama and wide grip snatch deadlifts or wide snatch grip deadlifts.
Yeah, but he did come out with a gem, man, and especially for, I don't even know when it was released, 2011 or 12, something along those lines.
It's old as shit, and it was free.
That's another thing, kind of like a correlation that you could draw is, overall, Candido is kind of like the godfather of powerlifting for like people like us, right?
Yeah, he's godfather of YouTube powerlifting.
Yeah, that's a good caveat. And then you look at Dave Tate and Elite FTS, they just gave out so much free stuff. And I've heard
what?
Go ahead. Yeah, I was thinking, I've heard different things of like, it's not necessarily the most profitable business model, but you're making that impact, and at least I hope you're getting by with a decent living. So
yeah. I was gonna say Dave Tate would be like or Elite FTS would be like the Oregon Trail of video games, and like Candido would be like the Halo, or he'd be more like Doom, I guess. And it's like, okay, at the time these were both groundbreaking, but like right now there's like this big gap between them. But that doesn't make any of them less important than the other.
All of you gamers out there, you're gonna appreciate that analogy.
Exactly.
I liked it. Nice, man. So you were training, doing Brazilian jiu-jitsu. Wow, that was tough to pronounce. And then how did it kind of become the thing that you were like interested in, to like a true passion you wanted to pursue in college?
Well, like honestly, I was at the point where I'm graduating and I'm like, what the fuck do I want to do with my life? Just like everybody. And logically, you're like, all right, I enjoy working out. Clearly, that's a great career field to just go right into. And at the time, I was like, because I started as dietetics. I was like, it was 2 things. I was Lane Norton was a big. I guess he's still big. I don't know how big he is anymore, but like I feel like right around that time, like 2015, Lane Norton was like the guy. Like If It Fits Your Macros was huge. He's out here like fucking slam dunking these people with like his evidence-based research and shit like that. And that's like, I had just gone through a season of wrestling where I was like, I had to be really careful about my weight, and I was like doing all these crazy up and down cuts, which were stupid, but whatever. But I was like, all right, like I'm seeing the power of like, macros and shit like that, and like just going with like this hard science data aspect of it, and like the tracking aspect. And to me, that kind of appealed to me because I have somewhat of an analytical side, obviously, if I'm like trying to be in this like coaching capacity. And so that was cool to me. I'm like, okay, I can get more science heavy with this stuff.
Yeah.
And I was also like, all right, I'm not nearly jacked enough to be a strength coach. So like, I'll just stick with like the sciencey end of like nutrition and stuff like that. Clearly I got over that hurdle eventually, but not by getting huge or jacked, but just by not caring. But
I feel you.
Yeah.
Yeah. On my end, I originally started out with dietetics as well. And to me, it was kind of just like, oh, if I can learn how to utilize this, it's kind of like an edge. It puts me up against the competition in a sense. Not that I really had any competition, but a lot of like, I feel like we were kind of in the same boat where like with our peers, you know, there's certain guys that were like super athletic and they could kind of just like get away with, you know, like training for like the lifts, sports, and then like eat whatever they want, but they were beasts on the football field or the wrestling mats. And I was like, dang, I'm gonna actually have to like learn about this if I ever want to like have a shot. So similarly went into dietetics, but you know, both of us ended up changing. So what brought about that change for you?
It was weird. I mean, it was, I guess this is my pre-podcast where we were saying that like I felt like dietetics at that time was it was really like people were treating it like a soft science, and I hated that. It drove me nuts. You know, everyone's like, I'm sitting here and I'm like, okay, you know, we're on. I changed a little bit. I got a little more flexible as I matured a bit, but I was like, we can only use like randomized controlled trials that don't suck, you know, and like the only thing in the world we know is like protein, macros, and calories and fiber, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And then people were like, oh, blah blah blah, we take this correlation with like vegetarians live longer, therefore everyone should be a vegetarian. It was driving me insane. I'm like,
yep,
y'all don't even care about getting like as jacked as humanly possible and your evidence like sucks. I'm just not about it anymore. And then I was like, you know, a little bit of an identity crisis, and I'm like, oh god, like this is gonna have to be a real career at some point. So I'm like, I had done like some coding stuff in high school. I'd taken all of our coding classes, and so I'm like, whatever, I'm gonna push out as far as I can. I'm gonna push this stuff as far as I can get. I'm gonna go and do computer science or software engineering for a year. Turns out that drives me more insane for totally other reasons, mostly just because like programming's hard to do and it's very frustrating. And I just didn't have the patience or the focus to do it.
Yeah.
So after trying that for a year, then I'm like, you know, I know I like this exercise science stuff. I know I like the science aspect of it. And I'd rather be, you know, the world's best strength coach than like a random kind of mediocre computer programmer, you know, because like I can see myself, like I can put in, you know, 60 hours a week doing strength coach stuff, no problem. But like I do freaking 3 hours of programming a day, and I was like sick of it. I'm like,
definitely.
If I'm sitting here and I'm concerned about real jobness, I'm like, okay, I'd rather be the 1% of strength coaches that just make it work, you know, in an extremely lucrative way, I guess. Like there's a lot of people out there trying to be the next Johnny Candido, but I was like, I have a better shot of being the next Johnny Candido than I do of being the next, like, I don't want to say Steve Jobs because I don't think he really did any programming, but I don't actually know any famous programmers. So
I don't either, man. We'll fly with that. I'm good with that.
Yeah.
I feel you though. Yeah. It is a very interesting community, that dietetics side. Like part of my degree, mine was called health promotion, nutrition, and exercise science. So it was basically like glorified personal trainer, if we're being honest. But
I mean, that's what all exercise science degrees kind of are. Maybe someone else disagrees, but like that's what mine was.
Yeah. When I started off in nutrition, I did some weird diet protocols, man. There was a guy that was like pretty big around Columbus. This is gonna make you crack up if you never heard about this. Fuck it, I'm just gonna say it. Corey Gregory, you remember him? Yeah. So I went out. No. Okay. So he trained at Westside for a little bit. Bodybuilder, did like some magazine covers. He had this eating protocol called anabolic fasting. Just think about that for a second. So what we would do in that is, so like we would go train at his gym, which was outside of Columbus on the east side. We would train at 4 a.m. and then you wouldn't eat until noon. But like the diet was like semi keto in that like it wasn't really keto because you would have 2 bananas or like a sweet potato at night before bed. But it was like, other than that, it was like I would eat like a pound of ground beef at noon because I was so hungry. Like you had no like portion constraints, but it was just like protein and fat and vegetables, and then like bananas and peanut butter before bed. So I had done that, and then I was like, wow, this is actually really stupid when I started learning more about it. And
Yeah.
I told people in dietetics class, I was like, yeah, like this is what I did. Cause of course the dogma of nutrition is like, oh, carbohydrates, it's like the most important macronutrient. And I was like, I felt
Yeah.
like I was performing fine without carbohydrates. Like, why is that? And they're
Mhm.
like, oh, are you sure? Like, that just doesn't sound right. And I'm like, I don't know. Like, I didn't like suffer in any way, shape, or
Yeah,
form.
I didn't like fucking die. Like I got bigger, like and stronger eventually. I assume like it
Yeah.
had worked to some degree.
And like just the fact that like that community was so stubborn in their beliefs. I
Appalled.
was like, I'm gonna switch it up and broaden my scope a little bit. So I
Yeah,
feel you on that, man.
it's like you're looking around the room. Well, dietetics is a weird field because it's very predominantly women,
Yeah.
which like
Not
I don't
bad.
know. I don't know what necessarily causes that. Well, yeah, no, not bad at all. It's interesting because it's like, these majors tend to skew one way or another. And like it's
Mhm.
for a lot of them, it's pretty easy to see why. It's like, okay, like if like when I was in like software engineering, there wasn't a ton of women. It's like, okay, that industry, there are a lot of complaints in that industry about being a woman. Like, there's a lot of like people treating you poorly and stuff like that and
Yeah.
undermining you. But like dietetics, it's like, is there a reason why it's like mostly women? Do men not eat food? Like,
That's an interesting, I've noticed that. My only thought, which I
yeah,
have no evidence to back that up, is like just the social culture behind food for girls. And
yeah,
then, they go through
yeah,
that and want to find the right way to do things and then help people. But yeah, it is a very, very true phenomenon that hopefully it kind of gets a little bit more even in the future too, because
yeah,
there's a lot of work to be done with it.
yeah. I know. I like so when I was in like Olympic sports, right? So in a college, basically, what's happening is Title IX. You have to have the same amount of women athletes as you do male. So every college puts basically every single guy into football, and then almost every single other sport at your college is now rounding out the numbers by trying to get enough women in so that it doesn't violate any of those Title IX rules.
Yeah.
So I did one semester with the football team, and it was a pre-internship. So I only did it like 10-ish hours a week. And I
Mhm.
was like the intern of the interns. So
Okay.
as poorly as the interns were treated and how little responsibility they had, I was another rung below it.
Oof.
Although it's almost better because you don't have to deal with the coaches very often. So they have pretty low like expectations of you
Yeah.
versus those interns that just get kind of berated sometimes. But so that was only one semester, but like the Olympic sports ones, I think I was with for like 4 semesters,
Hmm.
and you definitely see that, and it's like, it's messed up in my opinion because this is talking about dietetics. Is there's this culture of like, you're not allowed to eat like anything, and the expectations even higher on these athletes because they're like, okay, like yeah, you got to be good at your sport, but like they get so much shit about their appearance as well. They're juggling two stones because like with you take a guy in a football team, right? And he's gonna be like, fuck it. I'm on a fucking college football team. I'm the star of the world, And like there's obviously men have these issues as well, A lot of them I saw people were treated poorly about their body being too small or too big in football as well.
Yeah.
But like those women, they get a lot of undue pressure, I guess, when they're trying to balance being an athlete and then these expectations of what they have to look like in general, what an athlete has to look like.
Yeah.
Because they're sitting there and they're like, okay, I want to be the best soccer player ever, and you're like, or that might not be the best example. I'm trying to think of maybe a better one. It's maybe more like volleyball, where they're more like a power based sport where it's a lot of jumping and like short durations. And
Hmm.
they're like, oh, like I'm not in good enough volleyball shape. That means I have to lose weight. And you're like, not necessarily. Like maybe you just like need to get stronger. Like you have to have like a good vertical leap, and you have to be like an absolute like powerhouse. You
Hmm.
don't like need to be like this small diminutive person who's like really thin. And like that's kind of the expectation sometimes, is like they have to be like small is better. It's not like strong's better. It's not like athletics better. It's like lean, smaller is better. Like I had a swimmer who's like she's like, hey, like, how do I make my shoulders like less wide, you know? And I'm like,
Stop swimming.
yeah, I'm well, like, it's like, well, you know, your like whole sport is like your goddamn shoulders and lats, you know? So like,
That's
it's going to
funny.
be hard not to do that. But I was like, you'd really just have to get like smaller overall. But then I'm like, but you know, the thing is like smaller overall is not better for swimming. I
Yeah.
don't know. And some of those coaches can be more on like the sports side usually is like those guys can have some unrealistic expectations for like training and nutrition, you know, because
Hmm.
you'll have coaches who are like, oh, you know, my girls fucking suck as that and shit like that. And like sometimes it's like to their faces and you're like, what the fuck's wrong with you? You know, like, like this isn't actually based in anything. Like you're just kind of assuming this for no reason, which is a common element of sport coaches sometimes. And yeah, I don't know. But I think that's kind of what happens in dietetics is like guys are like, dude, eat whatever you want, just like fucking go and hit bench press like 4 times a week and you're set. And they're like, awesome, you know.
Hmm.
That's the secret to my goals is like just fucking bench pressing a house. But then
Right.
women are like, oh, you know, like I have to watch what I eat because I need to be smaller and I need to fit this image and shit like that.
Yeah.
And like guys get it too, but like I would imagine that's where a lot of that's coming from is the first interest is like, okay, you know, I don't want to say control their bodies, but like that's sort of what, you know, I think the roots of like those, if it's in a scenario of disordered eating, that's kind of
Yeah.
what's happening.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hopefully something that kind of resolves over the in the future, I guess, because I mean, while there are some positive correlations to your body composition and your performance, it's not
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
necessarily a physique sport, so you don't have to be
Yeah.
in a box
You don't need, if you play soccer, you play volleyball, you play golf, you know, insert anything here, you don't have a weight class, you know,
necessarily.
like obviously, you know, there's mass to fat ratios that are going to be more ideal for being fast and stuff like that. But
Yeah.
besides that, you know, sometimes it's like, hey man, you know, you practice like 3 hours a day, like you should consider eating like carbs ever.
Right. What were some of your other big takeaways from the internship experience at Iowa State?
I was, you know, it's hard because everyone wants like, they're like, what's that one thing I can pull from that internship that you learned? And you know, I'd say training doesn't usually operate in like a one thing kind of basis.
Right.
Training kind of operates, like I said, like a system basis. So that experience, I was lucky because I had some good coaches that are like, they're like, hey man, you know, read this, like this is what you need to know, stuff like that. I wasn't just
Mhm.
like, hey man, go fucking wipe down the benches and shit like that and keep the
Yeah.
Gatorade bars stocked. Like, of course, I also had that bitch work, but they were trying to make me a better coach, you know.
Hmm.
And I would say a lot of them, they have their own things because what it did is at that time I was coming in with this powerlifting more background, right? And then you see sometimes these programs for athletes that at first you're kind of like, this, you know, why isn't everybody doing starting strength, you know, with like just freaking get your squat up, bro, get your deadlift up, get your bench press up.
Hmm.
And I'm not gonna be one of those guys. Like I'm not like a functional type guy who's like, if you touch a barbell and bench press, your shoulders are gonna explode and you're gonna lose all athleticism. But it opened my eyes initially to like, oh, like there are a lot of things that work, and there are a lot of there are more adaptations that you can aim for besides just strength. I
Hmm.
don't know if you were how like when you got into lifting, or I guess it's still in general, like how big was like starting strength, you know, was that like something you saw a lot? Is like Mark Ripto's ideas pushed around?
Yeah, I did see it a lot, but I think like personally, because I was more like watching YouTube videos, um,
Yeah.
I kind of like lean toward other resources more, but I definitely remember hearing about it quite a bit. It was a huge influence around that time.
Yeah. I'm not going to say like Mark Ripto didn't do a lot of things very well, but that guy can be like the king of like pseudoscience sometimes. Like
Yeah.
he will say some shit so confidently that like when you're like 15, 16, you know, you're like, oh yeah, this makes perfect sense. Like fucking Mark Ripito, this 50 something year old Texas man, he's got every single secret athletic performance. Why doesn't the NFL fire every single other strength coach besides him? Like I'm pretty sure, I don't think I'm making this up. You know, Mark Ripito, go ahead and sue me. But I'm pretty sure he said something like, you know, you can't get faster at sprinting. Like you can never improve the speed of like your muscle flexing. All you can do is get stronger so that in relation, it's like less weight. Like you can't take the same weight and learn to move it faster without getting stronger. And I'm like, yeah, that makes sense. You know, that's vaguely based in physics, right? Like if you're just applying more force, you're stronger in a way. But that's just not true. We know that's not true. We have studies that show like you can focus on speed and you can train the trait of just speed, even if it's like just bench pressing faster. Like it doesn't have to be like the skill of sprinting necessarily. And it's like, that was like a thing I believed, not at that time as much, but like earlier. I remember in high school, I definitely like pissed off a friend one time because I'm like, bro, like just fucking get stronger. Like, why are you worrying about like anything else? Like literally anything else in the gym besides like getting stronger. And he's like, what about like getting faster? I'm like, that's just getting stronger, but like different. Like, don't worry about it, bro. And so that like, it helped me learn what programs can look like. And there's a lot of ways to skin a cat. It's a weird saying because I don't know why you'd skin a cat, but there's a lot of ways to accomplish goals. And there are goals other than just max strength.
Mm-hmm.
So like, when you're in strength conditioning, you know, it's not always like, hey man, how do we get people stronger? It's more like, hey man, how do we get people stronger when we have them 45 minutes, 2 hours a week, you know, 7 of them hate barbell back squats. 8 of them have like elbow issues, you know, it changed my ability to pivot and adapt and understand, like kind of cut through the clouds of being like, okay, what's actually important? You know, do I need, you know, a 5x5 linear program for getting this person squat up? Or do I just need something that makes their legs and hips stronger? You know, it made me more flexible, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
And it improves. I think there's a skill of coaching that people won't realize until they've actually worked with people.
Yeah.
Because you'll get a lot of people that are like, you know, they're from 531, they're from starting strength. And they're like, dude, you know, you need to get under a barbell and you need to add 5 pounds to that barbell. You need to drink a gallon of milk and you need to repeat over and over again forever. And it's like, okay, well, you know, if somebody absolutely fucking hates barbell bench press, even for no reason, if they absolutely despise barbell bench press and it's like a barbell fell on them once when they were a child, that's the only reason why they hate barbell bench press. You know, you're telling me you don't have any other tool in your toolbox. Like you can't freaking dumbbell bench press and get this person strong enough for their goals. Like if it's a power lifter, like, yeah, man, you're probably gonna have to barbell bench press occasionally.
Mm-hmm.
But it made my mind more open to like, let's not get focused on an exercise, you know, let's not get focused on a barbell, you know, weight going up. Let's get focused on like, what's our adaptation? You know, our adaptation here is max strength. Our adaptation here is growing size. Sometimes it's, you know, speed and cardio as well, but I'll keep it more meathead focused here.
Right. Yeah, I definitely, that resonates with me, man. Learning, I mean, so me training clients, personal training, learning to like work around your own biases. I think it's something that just everyone has to go through. Like we could be telling the, you know, 21, 22-year-old senior that's about to go into the field. We could be telling that something like, I don't know, fuck them guys. I think I'm gonna have everybody squat, bench, deadlift. And like one thing, like similar to the more than one way to skin a cat. I had after I'd been training for about a year, I had like a new trainer and I was trying to help him out. And he was like, so like when I'm structuring this guy's program, like, you know, should I have him do this? And I was like, dude, like, to be honest with you, I know the guy that you're training, it really doesn't matter. Just have him do like something, like some type of push, and like he'll be all right. Like if he feels his muscles working, you know, you're getting your desired effect. Like sometimes you kind of gotta like simplify it and like you said, realize that there's more than one way to skin a cat. Maybe that's what this episode would be called.
Yeah.
But
well, and you know, like I definitely and like I think it's true for sports. I think it's true for strength sports. I think it's true for Gen Pop. There's a lot of ways to accomplish the same goal.
Mm-hmm.
Gen Pop's different because you're basically like, oh, okay, man, like you sit at home all day on a couch, or you haven't exercised in like 7 years. That's even more flexible because it's like, dude, I need you to do anything and you're going to grow muscle and you're going to lose fat.
Yeah.
But even with powerlifting, if a guy's like, if you get someone who's like they fucking love hitting like heavy triples and they absolutely despise doing like fucking sets of 15 or something on squat. Like if you can't find a way to write a program where you had a goal and your only way to get to that goal was like sets of 15 on the squat, and you're telling me this dude hates sets 15 on the squat, I'm like, okay, man, maybe you need to like find something else. Maybe like, you can't do like clusters. You can't do like 10 sets of 5 with like short rests and shit like that.
Yeah.
And I think it's underrated, the buy-in aspect, as some people call it, is like, if you, even if sets of 15 on squats were like the number one thing this guy absolutely needs to do to get better, and if he did that, you could guarantee he'd put 30 pounds on a squat in 6 weeks. If that dude thinks that's the stupidest idea of all time, how much are you actually going to get out of him? Like, he's going to put in less effort. He's not going to think it's going to fucking work. And then when 6 weeks rolls by and he's, all he's thinking about is those stupid ass 15s that he did and how they didn't do anything, that dude's not going to be ready to hit a PR.
Yeah.
There's like, we sit here and we have these studies, and we're like, okay, finally we've waited 5 years and now we know that you gain 1% more muscle with sets of 15 than you did sets of 5.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, okay, but like we have this other study where like this person thought they were gonna get stronger for literally no reason, and they got like 30% stronger.
Yeah.
Like there was one where they took like powerlifters. So they took people with like significant amount of training. I think like the average person had like a 500-ish pound like squat and deadlift and like a 300+ pound bench.
Mm-hmm.
And they told them they were developing like an instant steroid. Like they told them it was a steroid that works in like fucking 20 minutes and makes you stronger. If you know anything about like hormones, that's never going to happen. We're never going to have the fucking 10-minute D-ball. it's it takes longer than like 20 minutes to build like 5 pounds of muscle. But these people put like their already respectable totals, and after like 6 weeks, whatever, super D-ball, quote unquote, it's placebo, obviously. They put like 100 pounds on their fucking total versus the control group.
Jeez.
And then at the end, they're like, hey man, super D-ball doesn't exist. You've been taking a placebo. A bunch of these people's lifts went down afterwards.
That's
right?
an interesting design.
So you're going to tell me that you think like sets of 15 on squat, everybody needs 15 on squat. And meanwhile, you can just tell someone they're taking super D-ball and they're going to have a bigger increase on their total anyways. Like, I think that aspect of like a coaching relationship is like so underrated. Like there's no such thing as a perfect program in a scenario unless you account for every single part of that little context. Like what do they think about this? Like how's their week going? How's their day going?
Yeah.
Like where's their general headspace at? Like it's not just, it's not just spreadsheets. I fucking love my spreadsheets, but it's not just spreadsheets.
Yeah.
Hey guys, thank you so much for checking out this episode of the Trainer Scoop podcast. I just wanted to let you know I offer a free week of online coaching to anyone that would like to take a strategic approach to training and nutrition. So within this free week of coaching, you'll get a consultation call, personalized calorie and macronutrient values, and of course, your own personalized training program. So if you or anyone you know would like to take advantage of this offer, feel free to just shoot me a DM on Instagram or Facebook, or just follow that link in the description of the podcast and it'll take you right to it. Thank you so much, and back to the show.
Definitely. Yeah, man, 2 things there. So first thing, one element that I left out of my anabolic fasting thing where we trained at 4 a.m. was we also squatted to a max every day. But I believed that shit, man. Like I really was like, I was waking up at 3 a.m. happy to like go train.
Yeah.
And I think
you're like, let's hit another fucking squat max, baby.
Yeah, exactly. And like looking back on it, I'm like, wow, that was so stupid. But the buy-in's real. So
yeah,
as you're kind of like, coming up, and I'm sure you'll be faced with opportunities to, now you're training to coach in the future. what are some of your methods of connecting with the people that you're working with, the athletes that you're working with, and really kind of enhancing that buy-in for them?
There's it's kind of I don't know, like I don't know how much you're into like the strength and conditioning aspect of things, because like there's a little bit of like cliches I've seen now that I've been around, you know, for like 3 years, and I'm not even like actually like in university or anything, but
Mhm.
it's a common one, but it's nobody cares how much you know until they know how much you care.
Mhm.
And so like you can take this athlete, right, and you can show them that you know fucking everything in the world, but if they like just don't think you care about them at all, like it's going to be hard to get any, you know, any of those other important things out of them. You know, like are you really going to get an honest like overview that like, you know, if someone's been like fucking stressed all week and so their food's been shit and they haven't slept at all, and so that's like kind of starting to tank their training and making their shoulder fucky and their elbow hurts, you know, are they going to tell you that if they think you're just going to be like, okay, cool, add 5 pounds, enjoy next week, see ya? Like you definitely, the more communication you can establish between the two of you that's like genuine, the better off you're going to be. And like that's the difference between, right, the spreadsheet and the coach. Is I can send anybody the spreadsheet and they can follow it, and you know they should probably get stronger because you know they did fives for however long and they added weight to it. But if you're not able to pivot anything, if you're not able to guide them through anything, if you're not able to be like, hey man, you know, I know you're sleeping 6 hours a week because school is important to you, but you know, you'd probably be better at school if you had 8 hours of sleep. Like that's how you get that buy-in. Is, you know, you obviously you have the requisite tools in your toolbox to actually solve problems, but you need to have a form of relationship. I know like it can be tricky because a lot of times there's a business aspect to it, you know, like not, you know, you're not going to get free coaching from this one person just because you like them a lot, and you know you're like, oh, but be nice to me, I thought you care about people. But even, you know, a coach doesn't have to be a friend, but they still have to be a coach, right? They still got to listen. They still got to actually meet you where you're at and guide you where you need to go. Like this might be more up for debate for some people. Are you a big like JM Blakely guy? Did you watch his like table talks on Elite FTS?
Yeah, I liked his stuff. Beyond the table talks, I don't really know much about him, but I did enjoy those.
Yeah. He's kind of a mystery man. He's not super, he's like, he just started like a YouTube and an Instagram that are great because I fucking love JM. But
Mhm.
I didn't get to meet him though, which that sucked, whatever. But he he kind of talks about, he's like relentlessly positive, and it's appreciated because the motherfucker was strong as shit. Like the dude benched like 700 pounds, you know, like that's pretty undeniably strong. And yeah, I know it was like in a bench shirt at the time, but like the dudes at that time were like struggling to get like 50 pounds out of a bench shirt. So like I know that dude benched like at least 600 raw. So yeah. And if you've ever looked at the dude, looks like he has like 23-inch arms that are like all tricep. He's a walking human tricep. So he's this freaky strong guy, and he's still just like relentlessly like just too nice, like not literally too nice, but like he speaks like a goddamn yoga master more than like a power
Yeah,
lifter.
yeah.
Like people joke like he's like the Bob Ross of like bench press and shit like that.
That's funny.
And you know, you have these high school football coaches that I don't know, watch too many like Rocky movies or too many like football movies and stuff like that. And they're like, all right, the only way to coach, right, is to scream as hard as possible at these kids and tell them that they're these worthless worms and shit like that. And then they'll just rise up out of the dirt and they'll be even stronger for it. And it's like, yeah, like maybe, you know, but like I'm not sure that shotgun blast approach is going to work super great. Like, how about we actually take what we think is important and find a way to like target what we're trying to grow at. Like if you have someone that's not confident, the solution isn't to just ruin their confidence until they have no choice but to like, you know, quit your team and, you know, do nothing or kill himself or just be a stud athlete. It's like, okay, how about we just actually create some situations in which we can find a way to grow someone's confidence? Let's take like an incremental challenge and like build this person up. Like, you don't have to baby them, but you like actually have to try and create an actual stimulus. You can't just throw the same shitty stimulus at everybody. That, in my opinion, is usually just people with like ego problems who want to scream at people for a living.
Yep. That's a very good answer, man. I think you crushed that question. For those that are looking to go into really anything, whether it be strength and conditioning, even training, like being able to bridge that gap between you and the person that you're working with, it's huge. And that buy-in, if you can get that, then you have much likelier chances to succeed. So that was a great answer, man.
You're not gonna get as far without it. You can get by with some of it, but like the more of it you have, the way better off you're gonna be.
Yeah, that definitely kind of clears up. As I told Mason before we started recording, I had watched a episode of Elite FTS's podcast Table Talk, which his episode is 42, I believe. So if you want more from Mason, go check episode 42 out. It was a great episode. You had some great questions, man.
I'm peppered in a couple other ones as well.
Oh yeah, got you. Yeah, I think I do remember.
I'm hidden. I'm not in the title. I only get one title screen, but
hey, we know you were a strong supporting role. But when you and Dave earlier on in the episode were talking about like the psychology aspect was one of the things that was lacking in common, exercise science kinesiology programs. That really explains it to me. So I'm kind of intrigued, Mason. I can't pick it out right now. What is the most intriguing aspect of strength and conditioning, or most fun aspect of strength and conditioning for you?
Well, everybody, this kind of ties in the last thing. I joke, like, what happens, you take these people who like, they really like exercise. They go into exercise science, they get like a personal training cert, right? And they start training people. Well, and then they find out, weirdly enough, the only people who really pay you to personal train them, 80% of them, are the ones that like really just don't like exercising. So these people who really like to exercise go and get a cert or a degree.
Yep.
And then they end up, all their clients are like, I hate exercising. That's why I'm paying you to force me to exercise. Like that's sometimes the real role. Like obviously, obviously I try to take it as seriously as possible. I'm not like gonna freaking throw everybody the same like 3-day split or whatever and be like, all right, have fun while I stare at you and count your reps. Like that's kind of BS as well.
Mm-hmm.
But I totally lost my train of thought. What was the question one more time?
Yeah, just what's the most intriguing and fun aspect of strength and conditioning for you? I think I see where you're going with it.
Yeah. But what happens is people do that for like a year and they're like, wow, this like sucks. I want to work with athletes because athletes, they really want to be in the weight room, which here's the trick. Like most really good athletes, they do not give a shit about the weight room. And they always think that like strength conditioning is personal training, but you yell all the time. Like that's the misconception. Everyone's like, it's the exact same thing, but now I get to scream at you and like pretend I'm in the Marines and shit like that. I'll say this because this guy will probably never see it, but when I was at Iowa State, part of the personal training aspect is we started providing personal training for like the sport clubs that wanted it. And so we were working with the rugby team, and it's our first day with the goddamn rugby team. And I'm a little pissed because I didn't get in on the program design part. And the first thing we had to do was sprints, and like a dude tore like an adductor on like the very first sprint. I'm like, what the fuck did y'all expect? But that's a whole other thing. But either way, it's his first day, and this motherfucker's just like, I've known this guy. I've been around in personal training for months, and he like puts on this huge tough guy act and starts like yelling at everybody for no reason, like puffing his chest everywhere and like talking to him like he's like trying to like emulate like a drill sergeant, And I'm like, what the fuck are you doing? And like 3 weeks later, I'm talking to these rugby guys, because I'm like, day one, I'm trying to build like fucking rapport. I'm not going to scream at them first day. I'm not going to scream at them preferably at all. Like hopefully they just freaking do what you want them to already. But like they said, I can't remember the exact words they used, but they're basically
like,
what the fuck is up with this guy who screams all the time for no reason? He's like, we could like talk to you like you're a human being and like get real answers. What is going on with him? And I'm like, that's So that's the misconception, is like, if you hate personal training, you're probably not going to like strength conditioning either. Like, it's really the same general field. Like, people joke about but like, people see this difference, they see the difference between gen pop and athletes, and they're like, oh, these are polar opposites on the spectrum, right? And it's like, not really. Like, most athletes, they don't like lifting weights that much. And like, B, even like the freakiest ones, they're probably like in the NFL, so you don't have to worry about that for like at least 5 years if you just started getting in strength conditioning. But most of them are like, they're basically gen pop. Like, you take someone that's like a stud like baseball player, and like, yeah, like the really good one who's been strength training for years is probably like repping like 225, but like half of them are like, nah man, I played baseball all the time, like I don't fucking bench press 4 days a week, like my max is like 185. Like
Right.
it's they're not as different as they think. So if you hate personal training, I'm not going to guarantee that you're going to enjoy strength conditioning. But to me, there is an aspect that's different. It's that you have like a very concrete goal in a way. You're trying to make better athletes, and everybody that's fun. It's fun to take someone, because that's what got me into it, right? I'm like, I want to be like a fucking freak. I want to be like Mariusz Pudzianowski. I want to be like Derek Poundstone. I want to be these people that do shit that other people do not do, because I'm just a goddamn specimen. And like, that's cool. Like, that was fun with football. It's like, okay, I'm working with these guys that are like, these guys are trying to work on like repping like 4 or 5 plates on squat. They're taking this shit seriously, and they do cool things, and they're invested in doing cool things.
Mm-hmm.
So like, that's, everything in training, any training, your own training other people, is like, you're finding this adaptation you're trying to create, and you're providing the best stimulus to fit that scenario. And so it has that problem solving side, but it's also just a very cool outcome. Like, it feels
Mm-hmm.
fucking good to like watch someone that you've been working with like hit a huge PR and shit like that.
Yeah.
You're like, oh hell yeah, like we're making strides. And if you do it right, hopefully they're excited about it too.
Mm-hmm.
Gen pop or athlete, you have some guys that are like, yeah, whatever, man, like I hit 315 on bench, like it's no big deal, like I got a game to play tomorrow.
Yeah. Yeah, I appreciate that answer. It was thinking about the best way to say this.
Yeah.
Like a lot of people, like you mentioned before, they have these misconceptions, and it's almost like kind of what I got out of what you said is like, just like seeing the other people succeed, and yeah, like, once again, that problem solving aspect, like having it all come to fruition. It's a very rewarding feeling, I guess.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was a cool way to frame it, man.
I'd say the problem solving aspect is also more interesting, because a lot of time with gen pop, it's like, all right, man, we're going to do sets of 10 on like every generic exercise. You're going to squat, you're going to lunge, you're going to press, you're going to pull.
Mm-hmm.
And your stuff's going to go up. But like, sometimes it's like, most people that are into training, like there's accountants out there that are freaking jacked monsters, and they didn't learn shit about, exercise physiology and like the fucking Krebs cycle. No, they just went and they picked a program that other bodybuilders had run, and they just kept hammering away doing the basics for like 5 to 20 years, and they got goddamn huge. And, like, obviously there's no skipping that, there's no biohacking that you can't anabolic fast your way to a 5-plate squat. You still got to go, and you got to fucking squat, and you got to like, you got to focus, you got to train hard, you got to eat your pound of ground beef. But,
oh Lord. I'm like legitimately concerned about my health with the amount of 80-20 ground beef I ate back that summer, man. I hope that it doesn't come back to get me.
You'll be good. But God damn it, I lost my train of thought again. It was with athletes, it can be a little more fun because they're training more physical qualities at once, and you have more things to juggle. So if you are a problem solver, it's sometimes it can be a better puzzle to work with.
Yeah.
It's not just like, all right, man, we're gonna do something that works your quads, and your quads grew. Cool. Sometimes it's like, oh shit, we got to work this heart rate zone and this one and like this amount of that one. And you can get more finicky with it, and you can get into that harder science aspect that you frankly just don't need 99% of the time. But you can crack those little times occasionally a little bit more.
Did you ever do
that's appealing to me.
Yeah. Did you ever do any research when you were at school?
No, that's probably the only thing I regret is I didn't get involved in that research aspect. Like there's people can be picky. Some people are like, oh, fuck you, dude. I don't need research. I lift heavy weights and I eat my goddamn ground beef and I get stronger because I'm a badass. And then you got other people that are like sitting there like evaluating the biomechanics of deadlifts, depending on what shoe you wore. And I participated in one study in college, but I didn't do any of the research aspect. I just deadlifted with and without shoes. It wasn't that interesting.
Yeah.
But I hate the idea of like an anti-science stance. I know like evidence-based is sort of the meme sometimes with like, people like our age, they're like, or you had on the data-driven strength guys.
Yeah.
I'm not trash talking them at all, but like, that's more of what people aspire to be sometimes. They're like, oh, I want to freaking know things. I want to like be on the pinnacle of research in the realm of like getting stronger and stuff like that.
Right.
And people act like there's these two camps. I don't really like that. But I think, to me, all the downsides of like those evidence-based guys sometimes really true downsides. They're really only people doing that side poorly. Like in theory, like the scientific method, oh my God, people would probably fucking hate me for this, but I'm going to say like the scientific method at the end of the day has no flaws. Like there's no flaw to the scientific method. The only flaw is when you execute it improperly, which happens all the time. And that's the thing, is like people do stupid studies or they draw conclusions that they aren't actually able to draw from science and stuff like that. But the only way to prove those things wrong or to be, or to have a better understanding of things is to do science even better. Like that's people's critique of science. They're like, 20 years ago, you said eggs were bad for us, and now you say eggs are good for us. So I'm throwing out the whole entire thing. And I was like, well, things incorrectly, and we said eggs were bad. And now we did things more correctly. That's the only goal, is over time, we get better at doing this. And so we get closer to the true answers of stuff.
Yeah.
And I think that applies to training well, is like, it's the same thing. It's developed systems, right? It's you gotta refine your system. Like maybe at one point your system gave you this answer and it worked, but it might've been for the wrong reasons or something like that. But the more you can flesh out your system, the more you can be prepared for different contexts. That's when you're applying your science better.
Yeah.
Is when you actually encompass everything. Like shit's complicated, so it's hard to encompass everything, but we narrow it down more and more if you do it right.
Yeah, I like that thought. And it reminds me of one time, a guy that was, older, more experienced trainer at the gym that I'd worked at. He was like, someday you're going to look back at your programs that you wrote people and you're like, wow, this is shitty. And he's like, and that'll be a good thing. And I thought, all right. And I think like, as we both get older, we definitely can recognize that there's some truth to that. And it's a just exact example of maybe you weren't carrying out that scientific method quite to the extent that you could have, or you just didn't have the knowledge to. So,
well, that's the thing, is like you were hopefully doing your best with what you had, but eventually you get more, and so your best is better. I know. I'll be honest right here. The first semester of my internship, we did a thing where we're like, okay, write a program for an athlete. I basically wrote like 5-3-1 boring but big. And like, I had okay reasons for doing it, but like in hindsight, this is so stupid. Like fucking athletes hate doing that. They'd be like, all right, today you've got like 8 sets of deadlift at super submaximal weights, and then we're going to like lunge, do a lat pull down and go home or something like that. Like that would drive people fucking insane.
They're like, Mason, I want to
really
use slam balls and I want to jump on boxes.
I want to push a sled, and shit like that.
Use a battle
I'm like,
rope.
nope. I'm like, you got to learn how to deadlift. And what way will you learn how to do deadlifts? By just doing deadlifts. That's all you're going to do. And you're going to get really fucking good at it.
I think it is funny on a side tangent. Yeah, to my understanding, Jim Wendler started coaching or like helping coach the strength of like the London football team. I don't know if that's true, but
I think so.
Okay. If you're thinking it and I'm thinking it, it's probably good. But like my high school, once again, we're like 30 minutes away from London. We used to kick London's ass, man. And then I honestly think like the last 2 or so years, their football program did so much better. Of course, they might have just got a couple good athletes and, we lost a couple good athletes. But I would like to think it would make me feel a lot better pursuing this fitness stuff and this strength stuff that he maybe made a little impact on their strength and maybe the way they mentally approach things too. But
I was going to say, I know he's big on another like meme word of strength and conditioning is culture. Everybody's like, we need this type of culture. And some people do it in like, okay, culture means I scream at people and pretend to be a drill sergeant. And then therefore they will be tougher and therefore better at football or whatever. Which if you don't already follow rugby strength coach on Instagram,
I need to.
He did rugby for like freaking ever, but most recently he was at a college doing like football, and then now he runs his own thing called the Strength Coach Network. But he's one of the smarter guys, and he I think he's kind of influenced a little bit of my quote unquote system developing in my mind, because he's like this is his take on like mental toughness and stuff like that. Is like, you can take a guy. What is it David Goggins, the guy who runs ultra marathons and then writes books about how to be super tough and cool like him? And it's like, okay, you can take David Goggins, you can have him run an ultra marathon, and he's gonna be really mentally tough during an ultra marathon. Well, you take an NFL player and you have him run an ultra marathon, he's gonna be very not mentally tough during an ultra marathon. It's like, I don't think there's some transfer, obviously. Like usually you can tell people have like grit or stuff like that, where like they persevere through shit and so they get shit done. But like, you want to make a dude more mentally tough during football, make him a really fucking good football player, make his skills like really good, make him so he spent like 10,000 hours on the football field. That's going to do way more than this guy who did like 100 hours of this Marine boot camp weird shit. Like,
yeah, definitely.
It's not as good for the gram, though. That's the downside. You're like, yep, I'm still fucking hammering away trying to master my craft. And it was like, nah, man, we like climbed under barbed wires and like went through mud and shit like that.
Yo, another part of the podcast that you did with Dave Tate that I thought was really funny was he said something along the lines of like, oh, I could tell someone how to like pop off on social media. He's like, all you have to do is say the exact opposite of what everyone else is saying. It could be like completely wrong. Like instead of like bracing against your belt, like suck your core in as hard as possible. Bracing. And he was like, just say the exact opposite. He's like, the shit that actually works and that's true. He's like, that's what doesn't really pop off on,
Oh, I've heard fucking hate. And like, I did that, you're always chasing that shiny new thing, like, oh man, the secret to big arms all along was blood flow restriction training, and shit like that. And it's like, here's my way of like I'm big on systems. That's like how mentally I process things. I'm like, you need, you can use the analogy of like tools in the toolbox or whatever, but at the same, it's like, it's combining that toolbox, it's combining with like a map, say, and it's like, a map is different than directions. Like directions will get you somewhere. You can take this one way to get somewhere. But if you have a map, that lets you get to that point from anywhere or pick any other point and get somewhere. So it's about like having tools and a general background knowledge and understanding of things that you can craft your way to get to something. you have all those ways to skin the cat, say, but you also have the background understanding of everything else to be able to pick out what is and isn't bullshit, you know?
Yeah.
And so like blood flow restriction training, right? You know, what's the gimmick there? Is it fucking blood metabolites in your arms? Is it, you know, eccentric loading and like deprivation of CO2 and oxygen, or, you know, buildup of muscle acidity? You're like, yeah, maybe, but like, you know what it is? It's like you lifted weights to failure with your arms, so your arms grew.
Right.
Like there's no getting around that, right? You know, like you're not gonna get a better squat because you did sets of 100 on a Bosu ball. You're gonna get a better squat because at some point you did 1 to 5 reps of heavy weights of a barbell back squat. You know, that's kind of how I see things. It's like, even there's no biohack, right? There's no secret anabolic fasting. There's just like, okay, you know, I ate fucking 300 grams of protein a day because I was eating all ground beef, and I trained my ass off. You know, you never threw out the fundamentals. You just found a really fucking weird way to get to the fundamentals. It was close enough to accomplish it, right? You know,
right. That's funny.
Like intermittent fasting in general, right? You know, are people losing weight because of whatever the fucking what's the word? Autophagy. That's the hot meme around intermittent fasting. It's like, oh, your cells are refreshing, so all of your tissue is going to regrow newer. And it's like, nah, man, you were 40 pounds overweight. You stopped eating 90% of the day, so you were, you know, you couldn't constantly overeat. You can only overeat for a short period of the day, and then by that result, you created less calories. You know, it's like you thought you had a biohack, but really you were just doing the basics unintentionally.
Yep. That's funny, man. So
it's got can I get one more thing?
Yeah.
With the anabolic fasting, you know, do you know the website and like Chaos and Pain?
No.
They were really big in like that like 2000 type era. And Jamie Lewis, I think, is the guy who's the writer for that. And he is like he's like a literal goddamn nutcase. I know on like his blog, he would always link, like he put like gifs of like porn and shit, like while talking about like fucking lifting weights. Like he was just a weird dude. But that's like, he did something like anabolic fasting. I think it was like the Predator diet or something like that. The dude just ate like fucking 500 grams of protein a day all the time. But
imagine his shit.
I can't. Carnivore diet. It's popular again. First it was Predator diet. Now it's carnivore diet. It's the same exact thing rebranded. But what was it? I was going to say, I can't remember why it was relevant, but he was talking about, he was like, honestly, like when I diet, I think he only did the Predator diet maybe when he was trying to lose weight, but he was like, when I diet, or some of my like clients diet, sometimes they get stronger because all they have to look forward to is going into the gym, and they have this shitty ass day, like 20 hours out of the day, because all they can eat is like goddamn meat. So if you go into the gym and you're not pissed off from your day and you're not very invested in how that training is going to go, you know, sometimes you can hit PRs. Like if I eat ice cream every day for fun, you know, training's not on my mind. Like I'm not in the same mindset as if I'm like, well, fuck, man, I can't eat ice cream because I only eat meat because I give a shit about my training. You know, it's that buy-in. It's, you know, you're always like, eating meat is getting me closer to my goals, and even if it's not, like, you might get stronger anyways.
Yeah.
But he eventually, after like 5 years of like this pushing this Predator diet, he changed it and made it so it can include like chicken wings pre and post workout. And the only reason why is because he tried chicken wings for the first time and thought they were really good.
Oh my God.
And so he has this whole weird diet, and he changes it because he's like, man, like fucking like breaded chicken wings, those are good. And the whole thing changes. And now you can suddenly have something besides like chicken breast and ground beef.
Fuck.
That's, you know, that's every secret diet for you right there. It's all arbitrary.
I would
like, just say you like stuff, you know, just do things because you like it.
Yeah, for real. Dude, that kind of reminds me of and I'm sure you talked about this at Elite FTS, but like there was a guy, I would say he like kind of similar to Dave. He owns a gym. When I lived out on the East Coast for a while, he owns a gym right outside of Philly. It's called Iron Sport Gym. Really?
Yeah, Steve Pulcinella.
Yeah, bro. I went there because in New Jersey where I lived, they were shut down until September, but PA opened in like June. So I was like, fuck it. I'll drive an hour to the gym. I don't have anything. And so I would just go there and like talk to Steve, lift, awesome gym with all Elite FTS stuff pretty much.
Yeah.
And dude, his stories were fucking hilarious. One, but two, like I feel like those guys, like the old heads, they're just fed up with the bullshit of the fitness industry like that, man. Like
I'll say like they're both like Dave and Steve are both like they're those guys of that generation. They were both like pretty high level strength athletes, and they've been in this shit for a goddamn while. But I'd say they're like on the opposite sides of shit. Like Dave's like a really patient, understanding guy, and I'm not saying Steve isn't necessarily, but Steve has like he's got the cranky old man shit turned up to like 12.
Dude,
we'll
just rip
Quad City Strong. Yeah. Quad City Strongman, the gym I worked out at, the guy, one of like the co-owners, he was like in his goddamn 30s, but man, he freaking like acted like he was like goddamn 60 years old, how fed up he was with everything. But he loved Steve Pulcinella. That guy was his goddamn hero. They brought him out for one of their fit expos. They like flew him in as like the celebrity guest. So I got to meet him like one time. That man has the bluest eyes. They're terrifying.
That's funny. He does.
Am I wrong? Yeah, they're so goddamn blue. He's this giant, hulking, terrifying man with these like eyes that stare through you.
Yeah, bro. Especially when he gets all red and shit. Like his face gets so red sometimes.
Which probably isn't hard. Well, he's the do you even lift guy. He was the guy in that meme like in fucking 2010. That's him. If you've heard the words "do you even lift," then that's Steve Pulcinella basically.
Yeah. Yeah, he's hilarious. Just like he'll rip people. I mean, especially lately because Philly locked down again. And a whole bunch of people from Philly were going over to his gym. And these, most people, I would pop down there every once in a while. Most people were cool, but some people were just like those classic USAPL dudes who like, they'll hit like the most fucking simple workout and they'll need some intro workout carbohydrates. So they'll have their whatever, Swedish fish, gummies, and just like leaving shit.
Eating gummy bears. And they got like 9 pairs of SPD stuff.
Yeah, bro.
Latest colors of sleeves.
He would just go off, man.
I believe
but you're saying Dave is a little bit more patient than that, huh?
Dave's not like a hothead. Like I like Dave because like for context for like listeners, and I guess for you a little bit, like I moved from Iowa State to Columbus, Ohio. Like I moved like freaking like 8-10 hours to go work at Elite FTS for free. Like I didn't do that like lightly, like I looked up a lot to like Dave and what he did and like, some of the knowledge he had that I was like, I think like this is worth it to me, like to go and be able to be there and to learn from Dave directly, like all the time. And I'll say like, I was surprised. Like they say like, don't meet your heroes, and stuff like that. And like, I don't want to say Dave was like my hero at any point, but like
I get you.
He's smarter, honestly, than he comes off online.
Huh.
Like he's a very like smart dude, like online and stuff. But like he kind of dumbs it down a little bit sometimes. Like he's putting shit on YouTube where 100,000 people are going to see it. He can't get like, if he gets shit too complicated, people get confused so goddamn quickly. So he just doesn't. Like he gives only advice he knows like will be helpful to whoever's asking. And if you listen to the table talks when he does like a Q&A, like 50% of the time when someone asks a question, he'll answer with another question, but it's because he knows that the context matters. It's if you were to do this to one person consistently, like it would almost be kind of demeaning, because you'd be like, they'd ask you a question and you'd be like, no, you don't mean that, you mean this. But like Dave's kind of right when he says that 90% of the time, because he's been asked the same questions for 20 something years.
Right.
So he knows, when someone says like, will close grip bench press make my bench go up? When people ask that, he knows like what the question is behind it. The question's like, well, hell, I don't really know what the question is there sometimes, but it's like, I don't know, man. If your triceps are holding you back and you get your triceps stronger, your bench is probably going to go up. Like it's hard to fuck that up.
That's cool though, because I think what you said were like, don't meet your heroes. That is something that's very real on social media, man. Like
it's very real in strength sports, man. I could get into that.
I'm not gonna say any names, but like
I'm not gonna throw anybody on the bus, but
I mean, I've
social media isn't all that it seems.
Oh yeah. Yeah, but that's cool. So I feel like why not transition into that point? You know, we talked about some of your college experiences, your interning with the Olympic sports. So, I mean, not to ask the question that you're already kind of like, well, you can't take one thing away, but what were some of the highlights of your internship with Elite FTS?
Well, I guess when people think Elite FTS and they think Dave Tate, they think the conjugate training method. You know, I don't know. Are you like a big conjugate guy at all, or it's kind of an older generation thing, you know?
Yeah. I've never run one. I've helped out at a gym that was big on it. I don't know if you ever heard of Lexington. They were another offshoot.
Oh yeah. I mean, didn't Chuck Vogelpohl train there forever?
Yeah, I think he's there sometimes now too.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that's like one of the bigger gyms there. But I would say like I'll keep it conjugate related for now because like that's kind of it's the question behind the question usually for Elite FTS and training is conjugate.
Yeah.
But I wrote a couple Elite FTS articles, but I wrote one about conjugate for strongman that like some people have said it's good, so I'm happy with that.
I've heard of that one. I feel like Zach posted that or something and I checked it out.
Yeah, because I interviewed him for that because I wanted like I basically took like everybody that like worked with or currently works with Elite FTS that I knew were like conjugate type people.
Okay.
And I asked them like strongman type questions like to help I tried to make like a comprehensive guide for people that are like familiar enough with conjugate, but maybe are either transitioning newly to strongman or just trying to like level up their game of understanding conjugate.
That's dope.
And that one's great because you don't even have to listen to me. You don't have to worry about my credibility. You can just listen to like the 5 goddamn experts I brought in.
Yeah, that's cool.
And but it kind of brings back to there's no hacking the basics, right?
Mm-hmm.
Conjugate sounds like this crazy system when everyone looks at it. Like what the fuck? Like Louis Simmons is talking about percentages and tonnages and weird amounts of certain amount of band tension and reverse bands and box heights. And like what the fuck is actually conjugate? Conjugate's just training. You know, it's a fancy word for how like 90% of people train, especially these days. That's what makes me laugh. Is you take all these USAPL guys that say they fucking hate conjugate and then you look at their program and I'm like, you're doing the same things these conjugate people have been doing for like 30 years. You're just rebranding it because it's not technically linear, you know, like that's the only difference here.
What's an
example? If you fucking do heavy, well, like the big thing about conjugate, right?
Yeah.
Is everyone's like this weird max effort, dynamic effort shit. No, man, it's fucking lifting weights. You can't ever escape like progressive overload, targeting weaknesses, working singles. If you're a power lifter, you have to focus on executing singles and doing like max strength. Like there's just, well, you see these dudes and they're like, all right, today I had an RPE 8 single of high bar squats. And then I did like a 4x8 back off also at RPE 8. And I'm like, cool, man. Like that's fucking conjugate right there. Basically that's like 70-80% of conjugate is like doing a heavy-ish single and then doing appropriate back offs that target your weaknesses to like build up size and strength. And I'm like, yeah, whatever. I mean, like, obviously the issue is you had this whole generation of people who just absolutely butchered it for no reason because they wanted these weird hacks of like, nah, man, I don't need to like add, you know, I don't need to do 5x5s of close grip bench press. I need a reverse forward band and this exact amount of chain and stuff like that. And it's like, I wrote my own article. It's like linked on my Instagram. Like I'm sure I'll say like, you can only find me at Instagram. I'm not like really anywhere else. I've got like a blog that I've written like one thing on and it's linked on my Instagram of Mason the Neck. And, but like, that's kind of the big takeaway of conjugate for me is Dave wasn't like, all right, here's the conjugate secrets. He's like, no, you know, you're going to do some heavy work because to get stronger, you got to do heavy work. And then you're going to do some volume that's still like a compound lift because you still train compound lifts. And then, you know, you're going to pick like a weakness or two and you're going to hammer that a little harder.
Mm-hmm.
Like it sounds so much more reasonable when you say it like that, you know, but everyone's looking for like, the problem is like Louis Simmons is really fucking hard to understand because he speaks in like, he's in his own world. Like he is speaking in Louis Simmons language. And until you learn how to translate it, nothing makes like any sense by him. But that's part of why I like Elite FTS. I'm like, cool. This is like Louis Simmons, but I can understand him.
Yeah. Dude, I'm going to make
like,
a comparison, and this might not be 100%, but I thought this the other day or a couple weeks ago. Alex Jones and Louis Simmons remind me of each other, bro, because like they get talking so fast, and you're like, "What the fuck?" You're like, "Oh, he might be right." But go ahead.
So like, I don't want to ever like. I'm not disparaging Louis Simmons anyway. That dude fucking knows his shit. He taught, Dave 90% probably of what he knows. I don't want to say that because I'm probably not giving Dave enough credit because he's fucking lifelong learner. But like the dude knows what he's doing. He just doesn't care about literally anyone else in the world. So you either get on his level or you don't know what he's talking about. Yeah. And like the dude produces results, that's for sure. Like he has athletes in there that are crazy strong, like raw, and are great athletes. He's got, he was a very dominant gym of equipped powerlifting for a very long time, and technically still is. It's just no one cares about it anymore. Not that anyone really ever cares about powerlifting in any time or group, but
right.
But yeah, I can't say I have a lot of respect for Alex Jones, so I'll be like, Alex Jones kind of just throws shit at the wall sometimes and then gets super pissed off about things. Louis Simmons is more like he's like the fucking gif of the guy in The Hangover, like counting cards in his head where he's like 90 equations like flying by him at all times. That's like Louis Simmons, except the equations are like shooting out of his mouth like randomly at like hyper speeds, and you're like, what are you talking about? It made me laugh because I was like, the other day I was like listening to like one of his videos or like reading like one of his blogs, like Westside Barbell, and like, oh my God, Louis Simmons is actually making sense. Like, am I just way too deep into conjugate? Do I need to like drop everything related to conjugate for now? Because I was like, am I just getting crazy, or does this actually make sense by him? But yeah, that's my Louis Simmons explanation.
Yeah.
There's a reason I went to intern at Elite FTS and not Westside Barbell.
Right. Got you. Yeah, and like you said, I don't know if I realized it was unpaid. That's a pretty big jump, man. Unfortunately, it's kind of what happens. Like I got paid like $75 a week by this place in Indianapolis. It was called the National Institute for Fitness and Sport, and I learned a lot there. But what's your thoughts on the way that like internships are set up in this field? Like, are you a fan of it? Would you change it? Of course, like it's tough going through it because money can be tight, but what are your thoughts?
Yeah. I mean, I don't want to, it is what it is kind of how I view it. I don't want to be like the old head who's like, oh man, I had to do it, so you have to do it.
Mm-hmm.
But I think there's some validity, especially like if you want a good internship, right? Like they're putting a lot into you as well. Like obviously there's shitty internships, like, right, you can go and you can wipe towels for the fucking football team 40 hours a week, or wipe benches with towels, sorry. And they don't put anything into you, but you don't get anything out of it, right? Like you take up 0% of their time, but you don't get a ton out of it. But they didn't put much like effort into you. Like when I was with Olympic sports, it's like, okay, we're meeting once a week where he's prepared like fucking PowerPoints, and we've gone over notes, and he's like lending me books, and I would say you don't want an internship as much as you want a mentorship from these guys. And I think if we could rephrase some of those things, like if we can distinguish between the two, because in theory, I think like legally even internships, like they have to be teaching you a certain amount, you can't just be like free labor or paid slightly less labor, because those laws are also weird. But like when I go to Elite FTS, right, I'm putting stuff on their website, man. I'm running their Twitter at some point, I'm on camera talking sometimes. I go on the podcast, and I'm like, I kind of become, I don't want to overhype myself, but like, I'm a face for Elite FTS at some point, which means that they have to put something into me. So now anytime someone goes to Dave and they're like, hey, does this Mason guy, does he know what he's talking about? Dave has to either be like, oh, I don't know, man, he just fucking showed up and like we didn't work with him at all. Or he has to be like, yeah, I put a little bit of my own skin into that creation of Mason who he is now.
Yeah.
And so if you can get in a mentorship position, if you can afford it, it's worth it. I don't want to be like, everyone needs to do an unpaid internship, because it fucking blows, man. You're putting in hundreds and hundreds of hours sometimes. And what do you get out of it? You get knowledge, you get exposure. And it's like, yeah, man, like those are infinitely valuable to me. Right. But like, I'm not paying any bills with, just random shit. So it's hard.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to say everyone needs to do an unpaid internship and the internship shouldn't be paid, but like, hell, look at those coaches at like in a college side. Those coaches barely fucking get paid, man. It is criminal what those guys get paid, and they get like treated like shit anyways. Like that's a whole can of worms. Is like the strength conditioning field is like a nightmare to work in. If you work for like a college, the average career is like 2 years and you get paid like $40K a year. If you're at a D1 school, you get $40K a year. If you're at a shitty school, you're getting like $16K a year. And like, no wonder, like half of those guys, they work at 2 colleges and they go and fucking sell real estate, and you've got these like super geniuses with like master's degrees and like 10 years of experience, and they fucking weld, they sell real estate because they would rather just like have a family than have to like pick up and move every 2 years to be treated like shit by some of those administrations. And so you're like, hey man, it's fucked up. I don't get paid for this internship. Like, what can you throw my way? And they're like, well, dog, like I can barely pay like my shit, and I'm already kind of getting screwed.
Mm-hmm.
So it's hard. I would love to see the industry change where those guys are treated better. And then you would then see sort of a trickle down almost. But until that field changes as a whole, it's going to be hard to get rid of unpaid internships. I'll say like, you can do it, you can go and you can do this shit on your own. You can learn a lot, but it'll be harder. You'll have to learn how to pick out good information. You'll have to dedicate yourself to like spending that free time, like learning from other people and reading and stuff like that. And you'll have to work. The biggest things, you'll have to work harder to master like your craft aspect of it. Because like, I got to go and I got to interact with and coach athletes for hundreds of hours. And then I would either learn from what I'm doing or also get feedback from those coaches. So it's like an accelerated crash course. Like, I don't know if I would have learned as much as I did there in like 5 years of doing it on my own.
Yeah.
Right.
And
so
then
it's like,
about it, all the time that you would have been learning over that 5 years, you probably it would be more financially beneficial, I guess, to do the internship in that context. So
maybe, some people, they hit the ground running and they do great. Right. You've got guys who are like, all right, I'm spending all my free time in college, like creating this, this brand image through social media so I can like online train people and stuff like that. And it's like, awesome. But it's almost like they didn't experience like that vetting process. Like you can tell it with some of those guys. Like, strength conditioning has this problem because people just brand themselves a strength conditioning coach. There will be no one who ever like looked at what they do and was like, yo man, this is stupid. Why are you doing this? Why aren't you doing that? And stuff like that. And I think that's important, is you take someone who's already done it and they're like, why? Like, how do you know that what you're doing actually matters? Like, are you getting people stronger? Are they jumping higher? Are they running faster? And some of those guys will just never know if their programs are actually working, but they just don't care,
Yeah.
It's that bit of reality sometimes. You can create a brand, you could sell something, but you're not always selling a reality. If you go and you work with those teams, not always, there's bad coaches. It's straight up. But hopefully you get a good coach, you get a mentorship, and then you get that dose of like, hey man, I've been doing this for 15 years and like, I like this part of what you're doing, but this part is like just not going to work because I've been there before.
Yeah. Okay. That was a good answer. Definitely. I hear about the struggles in strength and conditioning, and it's cool to see your perspective as well, having done it and been there. So if you don't mind me asking, what's your plan? Like, how are you going to navigate the challenges?
So I know during like that table talk, I talked about how I was like doing strength conditioning stuff, but like, honestly, I pulled out of that in terms of like the college sector of it.
Okay.
Cause I was like, I had that sort of like my own personal wake up call of like, I don't want to go around every, year and a half, 2 years to make like less than minimum wage to train people, when like that's not what's important about training people to me. It's about bringing that change in other people's lives. But you don't have to be a strength conditioning coach at a college to do that. You can have your own facility. You can train people online like people are doing. I mean, right now, like my main profession is personal training people at like a gym. And I'm lucky that I'm at like a really good spot right now. And I'm trying to grow like my online stuff a little bit more, just because, flexibility is nice. But right now I still consider myself in like the growth stage a little bit. I'm basically just like a walking like encyclopedia of like Dave Tate quotes and fun facts. But like Dave, he worked as a personal trainer for like fucking 8 years or something like that. Like people don't realize like how long it can take, and you can still be moving in the right direction. And maybe there's like a little bit of like coping for like knowing where I'm at, but it's like I can learn here. I can grow in the. I in my head I'm calling it like the eat shit phase, because it's like, all right, overnight, not everybody can just walk onto the scene and be Johnny Candido or Dave Tate or Louis Simmons. There's that sizable time where you're not exploding, right? But you're growing still. People may not know you as the guy, but like how many videos did Johnny Candido put on YouTube before people started actually watching them and he was able to turn it into anything?
Yeah.
So I'm still trying to do that. So my girlfriend, she works in conservation for like animals, environment, and wildlife. She's very animal focused. She got a degree in animal ecology and biology. But basically what we kind of came to the realization of is like, she's in a field where she has that eat shit, stage where every 2 years she's going to be moving to the next job. She's going to be trying to go to grad school. She's going to have to follow, if you work in wildlife, you can't really pick where you're going to be. You have to be where the wildlife is.
Yeah.
And even more so, you got to be where those positions are. And so what was going to happen is we were going to be in a scenario where we were both going to be moving in random spots every 2 years for like the next goddamn 10 years.
Yeah.
And I was basically like, all right, you're kind of limited in options if you work in conservation. Like she can't go in online conservation and like build her own conservation business. Like that's not really a thing.
Right.
And I'm like, all right, I like strength conditioning, but I have way more flexibility than her.
Yeah.
So right now I'm just personal training. It's, I have some strength conditioning clients and I'm doing some like online coaching for Strongman. And the long-term goal would be to establish like a bigger online presence for myself, because I know like, hey, 2 years from now, when my girlfriend gets a master's or a PhD position, if I have to uproot, it's going to suck if I don't bring anything with me. I can't bring this other person's personal training clients and gym with me wherever I move. But if I build up some more of that online coaching aspect, at least I don't start from square one every time I move.
Yeah.
And then, like 10 years from now, I would love to be in a position where I can have my own facility. I can be, do you watch Alexander Bromley on YouTube at all?
No, I don't.
He makes really good, insightful videos for like strength sports, but he competes in strongman as well. But he's in a position I would say is probably what I would enjoy as a balance, where he works in person with people, where he owns this gym, and he like puts stuff on YouTube, Patreon, stuff like that, ebooks, and trains people. I like that aspect because I don't ever want to just train people online.
Yeah.
Like it's cool. I still appreciate it, and I do it, and I do it to the best of my ability, but it's really, it's fun training people in person, and I would like to have, I like strength conditioning a lot. And it's kind of a field that gets a lot of BS in it. So I would love to be able to hold, I don't ever want to like totally ditch that aspect. I'd love to stay in that as much as possible, which is funny because I'm like, I compete in strongman. I went to like Elite FTS, and then people are like, well, what do you consider your strongest area? And I'm like, frickin' sports preparation, dog. This like non-athlete over here. But I know a couple things, but yeah, that's sort of the future plans, is like try to grow the online aspect more. you seem to be much more on top of that than I've been. I'm basically just like coasting on some small Elite FTS fame at this point, but fame.
Yeah.
But
I'm right there.
That's the long term.
Got you. Yeah. Yeah. I'm right there with you with the, I'm kind of the same way where I feel like the flexibility and I mean, maybe for me personally, the bulk of the income could come from online stuff, but there is just something about working with people in person that I don't know, it's what I like to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, man, I'm getting I've been talking to Matt Goodwin, and
Yeah.
I got us like I think it's like the Scholastic 3x3 rack that I picked up on Facebook Marketplace. So I'm in the works of building the gym right out in my parents' side building now. So
nice.
Yeah, it's just there's something about it, and I definitely it resonates. I feel like working with people is something I will always continue to do as well.
Yeah.
I
This might be this might be projecting onto people, but I feel like anyone who just like doesn't work with people in person, or someone who hasn't done it for a fair amount of time or is currently doing it and does like a bunch of online training, I don't trust those people, like it's not the same. Like you learn so much and so much faster, like working with people in person. Like there's that real-time feedback. And I don't believe there's anyone who will ever be a great online coach who never did any in-person training. I don't think that's a step anyone can skip.
Yeah. And you see it a lot on social media and like Instagram. And I just wonder, like, they get this huge growth and that's awesome. Like, I'm sure, they're making more money than we are.
Yeah.
I wonder what the longevity of that will be. We'll see.
Right. Like in 5 years when like, maybe this is too far, like the USAPL crowd, but like there's some of those like young phenoms, and they fucking blow up in like 3 years and hit these crazy numbers. And they're like, all right, time to like sell programs and online coaching and stuff like that. And you're like, you've literally never trained anybody before. You haven't even done like online coaching for more than like 2 months. And like, you're either like still in college or you got like a degree in like nursing or something like that.
Yeah.
Like, honestly, I don't like, my degree is not super helpful to me. But it's clear to some of these people who are never like, I'm a coach, that's what I do is like, I want to coach people, I want to help people, I want to learn about this. Some of them are just like, they're like, all right, man, like I'm conventionally attractive. I have like a 6-pack, or, if I'm a woman, like I have like nice body shape. And now I'm selling powerlifting coaching. Let's go. $200 a month. Jeez. I'm ready.
Yeah. Like I said, we'll see. We'll see how it pans out. Yeah, there's a lot there. We'll have to talk about it. But
I mean, like, best of luck to the people that are willing to put in the effort and like grow. Like, it's fine if you like online coaching, you suck at it for a while, but you're trying to get better.
Mm-hmm.
But like trying to just have it as like this easy free money.
Yeah.
You're gonna fall off the face of the earth real quick when everyone figures out you don't give a shit and you don't really even know that much.
Yeah, and I would argue that like, well, I mean, maybe not. For me, I would think if I were just trying to make money, there's easier and other things to do. But
right.
Like then again, I try to put a lot of effort into the online stuff, whereas like other people might not. So yeah, that is true.
I had a friend, he paid a dude at Iowa State. He paid him like $500 for like a 12, 16 week program with like, like nutrition coaching in it. And it was a shitload of money. The program was horrendous. Like I will like, normally I'm like, oh, you got to talk to the coach first and like understand like what's happening behind the scenes. Like it was like, all right, here's tricep day. You have 5x15 on every tricep exercise I know off the top of my head.
Wait, what was the goal of this program? Powerlifting?
It was like bodybuilding.
Okay.
Because that's the thing is this dude was like kind of like a bodybuilder, but as far as I know, he's like a photographer now. So like basically what was happening is this dude had this really curated like social media, and he had like a halfway decent six pack that I know that dude photoshopped that shit. Cause I had him in one of my classes, and it pissed me off a little bit because I'm mentally invested in this stuff, but he's like, it's an exercise psych class. And my goddamn professor's talking about how like everyone in America is dying of heart disease because, you know, they're fat, and personal trainers in the fitness industry is failing America because these numbers are getting worse and worse every year, despite the fact people spend more money on the fitness industry. So like, what are we going to do about it to actually make a difference? And this motherfucker spends the hour every single week, like photoshopping pictures of like his girlfriend or himself or like whatever the hell he's working on
in class
media, you know, in class.
Yo, that's funny as fuck.
And like,
Jeez.
it's whatever, you know, like if you don't want to pay attention in the lecture, I'm not going to pretend like I'm some great student, but yeah, he like charges my friend like fucking $500 for this dog shit program, and like ghosts him halfway through. Even after getting this fat stack of money, he's like not even responding to him anymore. And the dude had to like beg for like a partial refund. And I'm like, fuck that. That dude, oh my God. Yeah.
That's
yeah.
wild.
But these people exist, and there's tons of them. And they work because they have that marketing aspect down, but they have none of any of it else. And the guy graduated, I assume, with this degree in exercise science. And he's like, I'm going to go become a photographer. I'm not really into like, you know, coaching people and shit like that. I'm into charging him $500 for shitty programs. That's all I do.
That's brutal, man. That's brutal.
And nutrition coaching was like, the nutrition coaching was just like the shitty meal plan, of course. You know, it's like, oh man, you're going to eat plain oats and protein shakes and chicken and rice, you know, and you're going to get shredded. I'm like, awesome. Great, man. That's going to fit with everybody's lifestyle. It's going to be sustainable. You're going to have someone who's miserable for 16 weeks and they may or may not make progress, but you don't know because you just threw a random thing at them with no thought behind it.
Jeez, that's wild, man. So Mason, I feel like over this discussion, we've had some good insights on your end, and I hope that the listeners are learning a little bit more insight into, you know, what it means to go into this field, because I think we can both attest that, you know, off the bat and maybe even ultimately, it might not be the most financially rewarding thing, but, you know, really caring about the impact that you make on the individual, and then once again on the space as a whole, can go a long way. So I hope that's my hope after this discussion, is that people kind of got some thoughts about that. But one thing I always like to ask my guests are, what are some of your go-to learning sources? Because like you said, it's important to be a student of the game, continue on, and don't be stagnant as well. So what do you go to?
I go to everything that I think is appropriate at that moment. You know, I'll say, like, obviously I was at Elite FTS, and they're the OG learning resource, and they're still like a great learning resource. You know, there's freaking like 50 table talks. There's, that's so much like goddamn free Dave wisdom. There's so many of those articles on that website. You go in, you have any question, like for triceps, upper chest, bench press, freaking knee health, something like that. You type in anything in Elite FTS, they got an article for it. They might have a video for it. Any of the guys that are on the Elite FTS team, they may not have published everything on the website. They all have their own social medias, but they're all very vetted out people by Dave. Like, Dave doesn't bring on like any people that like totally suck and don't know their shit. But I dropped rugby strength coach a while back. He's got to be the best guy at strength conditioning right now. He's just such a good like critical thinker that like what you throw him a sport, he'll figure out every single thing it takes to be good at that sport, and he'll reverse engineer it into your program. And I think that's a big thing people need to learn how to do, is like, okay, where do I need to be? And let's work backwards from that.
Yeah.
Cause it's like, I apply that shit to everything I do now. Like it changes how you think. And I think that's like, maybe it's cause I'm later in now. And like now when I see exercise science, I see like some basic biology, physics, anatomy, like if you know those three topics like super well, you're going to know everything you ever need to know about training people. minus the psychology aspect.
Yeah.
But so then I think taking like working on your critical thinking skills, being able to figure out like what actually matters, because like you can understand the human body a little bit, but it's easy to get caught in the weeds sometimes and be like, what's important in my training? Like how do I decipher what's actually making a difference in this training program? Like, is it these hammer curls? Is it these barbell rows? Like how do I figure out what works and what doesn't? So a lot of, I try to read, I'm not going to pretend that I'm like as studious as I need to be. I'm working on some of those things where I like to follow people that, or I like to read. I don't love to read a lot of training books, because usually like it's someone else's system that they're explaining to you, which is helpful in the beginning, because you when you have no system, someone else's system can help you develop yours. But now I'm at the point where I'm like, I want to know about other people's systems, but like, I don't want to take theirs and make it mine. I want to take mine and make it better, and make my ability to decipher and fix situations better. So like, I'm reading it very, very, very slowly. Thinking Fast and Slow, what was the other one? God. A Field Guide to Lies and Statistics was a good one. It's a really simple book, but it's basically like, hey, if someone's presenting to you something they claim is scientific information, like how do you figure out when they've totally BS'd you in some way? That happens all the time.
Oh, yeah.
Like scientific journalism, you read like an article and it's like eggs are bad for you again, and if you read that, the eggs are bad for you, and you're like, well, this is it, it's exactly like smoking like 2 cigarettes. And there's a lot of ways people misrepresent statistics without lying. Like, it's something like for every like one positive, what are they called? It's the scan. It's when they check women for, it's like the X-ray to check women for breast cancer, right? For like every single one of those tests, there's like 10 false positives or something, where they take a woman who doesn't have breast cancer and they tell her she does, and they're wrong. So you're like, how the fuck does that happen? Like, how do you screw up 90% of the time? And it's like, you don't screw up 90% of the time. What happens is every single woman gets one of these scans like on a regular basis. I don't know what it is. Sorry, I'm not a woman. Mammogram, yeah. I don't know how often you get a mammogram, but what's happening, sorry, my girlfriend's in the background.
Hey, that's the MVP right there.
But like, women are getting mammograms all the time, and only a small percentage of them actually have breast cancer. So if the mammogram's wrong ever, but you're conducting millions of mammograms, you're ending up tons and tons of false positives. So like, it's weird shit like that. It's like, hey, like, how do I stop, think a little bit, and be like, oh, that's why that looks so weird. Like, that statistic makes no sense otherwise. And then Renaissance periodization. Dr. Mike Israetel, he actually, I think, was the person pushing Thinking Fast and Slow, but like, their shit is amazing. It is ridiculous. Yeah. They have hours and hours of shit that just like freaking A1 material on YouTube, everything. And I know they're more bodybuilding sometimes, but they're talking about human physiology is what they're talking about. And if you can get that stuff down really well, like, I would trust the guy who's watched and took notes on every single Renaissance periodization YouTube video more than I trust the guy who went and got a bachelor's degree in exercise science. if I'm trying to get someone big and strong. Yeah. Because like the big aspect that they talk about is like recoverability and stimulus to fatigue ratios. In every training, you have your SRA. I think it's usually a curve, but it's stimulus, recovery, adaptation. Yep. And that's training right there. Every single training adaptation you ever want to make is stimulus, recovery, adaptation. And so they help me frame my thinking in a way that's kind of centered around that, because that's kind of the goal, right? You're like, okay, I'm trying to grow my arms, I'm trying to get a bigger bench press, I'm trying to increase my deadlift. How do I create the amount of stimulus that creates the most adaptation? That's not always how do I create the most amount of stimulus, because you still have that recovery balance to it. Yeah. Is like, they're very big on that. They're like, hey, you know, how many sets of hard training do I need? Like, how do I periodize my program, whether it's strength or bodybuilding focused? And how do I like continuously, they're taking progressive overload, like that very simple concept of adding weight, and they break it down in a way that makes you able to use it in more situations. You know, they make it so it's now a more versatile tool for you.
Yeah.
They don't stray from the basics, but they nail the basics as hard as you can nail them. And I really appreciate that.
Yeah.
Because, you know, like that's what's happening in strength sports. At the end of the day, you're creating a stimulus, you're creating an adaptation.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah,
I'd
that's funny.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so I'm big on RP as well, and I would say there was a book that Jeff Nippert and another guy did called The Ultimate Guide to Body Recomposition. That book and RP stuff, I'm like, damn, probably wouldn't have even had to go to college if I would have seen those, but we're fine.
Oh God, this is my own joke, so who knows if it's actually funny, but I keep telling it to people anyways. It's like, before I went to college and got a degree in exercise science and did like 3 years internships and personal train and strength condition and Elite FTS and all this shit and all these books, if you asked me what training program you should do, I'd be like, I don't know, man, just like 5-3-1, you know, just pick like a variant of 5-3-1. And so now I've done all that and I've learned all this shit, you know, so now when you come and you ask me, I know the correct answer is just do 5-3-1.
Yep.
It's like, oh, you know, it worked perfectly fine before, but now I can tell you every single reason why it works.
Mm-hmm. That's funny. That's a good joke. I like it.
I'm glad somebody appreciates it.
You're looking over at your girlfriend like, see, I knew someone would.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. That's where was I going with that?
We were talking about
learning sources,
yeah.
RP, and yeah, okay. Did you have any others? Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there.
No, I mean, like, those are big ones, like Elite FTS, RP, read as many books as possible, rugby strength coach. Those are my big four right now. Like, people move in and out. Like, there's a lot of really goddamn smart people out there.
Oh, yeah.
I don't really like, I like Westside Barbell now, but I don't really recommend it to people that are like just trying to learn. Because like usually like their stuff will work, but like it can get confusing for no reason, like kind of that Louis way. So if you're into conjugate, go to Elite FTS first. There's like, if you just search like Dave Tate, Table Talk Conjugate, he's got like an 1.5 hour long video where he like lays out like how to write a conjugate program. That's like goddamn one of the best sources there is.
Yeah.
Yeah, you do that and you'll be set for a long while.
So Mason, thank you so much for coming on, man. In closing, I know you have some stuff coming up. Where can people find you? I know you mentioned you do stuff on Instagram. Where can they find you and what can they be on the lookout for?
I mean, it's really, at the moment, it's just Instagram. Like, I got some links outward, you know, like, hey, here's my website. Here's like a coaching intake form. Here's the stuff I wrote while on Elite FTS. I mean, honestly, if you ever, like, anybody ever has a question for me, shoot me a DM, because then you'll be sure to get an answer and you'll be sure to get like a personalized answer. I'm not great, honestly, at keeping my Instagram stuff up to date. Like, I'm pretty sure I post like one thing a month, which is just probably killing me on the algorithm. But yeah, I mean, if anything's coming out, it'll be on there, or it'll be in my little link tree on my bio. So
perfect.
And that's Mason the Neck. That was a great nickname I got when I was like 18 from doing neck training, trying to get it bigger. I've totally slacked on. Like, it's just not. I'm not living up to the name anymore. But yeah,
we got to get that neck back in.
It's freaking like minimum like 19 inches, you know, like 20 plus is obviously the goal. Like, I need a CPAP like by the end of 2021. Like, that should be the goal.
There we go. Well, yeah, Mace, I really appreciate you coming on, man. It was a fun conversation. One of the most fun that I've had, man. And I appreciate you all for listening. I will link Mason's Instagram in the description. I would really appreciate you guys if you followed him. And then if you like the podcast, I always appreciate a nice little positive review on Apple Podcasts. Like that shit up on YouTube. Share it around. I think I'm supposed to tell people to subscribe on YouTube too.
Like, subscribe, hit that notification button, leave a comment, let me know what you think, ask any questions.
Yes. and comment if you want to see videos of Mason training neck. And we'll make it happen. All right, guys. We'll see you.